The chance to interview a Hall of Fame broadcaster up next on Carpe Diem. Hello and welcome to Carpe Diem. I'm Patrick Clark, a television and digital media major in the School of Communication and Media at Montclair State University. Joining me today is fellow TVDM major concentrating in sports and media journalism, Sean McChesney. Sean is also sports director for 90.3 WMSC, Montclair State's radio station. Not too long ago, Sean got to sit down with Emmy winner and Hockey Hall of Fame play-by-play announcer, Michael Emrick, to talk about his incredible career. Welcome, Sean.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So tell me, how did you get this incredible opportunity?
It really started with the school. I can't remember exactly how the opportunity came about. There was a New Jersey Devils fan club meeting that took place in West Orange when it happened. So I'm not exactly sure how the school got involved with it, but I do remember Tom Kaminsky, a professor at the time, he asked me and a fellow graduate, Brian Gausward, if we wanted to do the interview. And of course, it was Michael Emrick, absolutely. So an incredible opportunity. I thought it was easily the biggest interview I've ever done, and it was an honor to be a part of it.
That sounds like an incredible opportunity. Let's take a look at what the doc had to say.
I think the fact that I wasn't a very good athlete and I knew I wouldn't be able to make a living at being an athlete or spending much time in athletics, but I realized I loved it a lot and I wanted to be around it.
U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame member, former New Jersey Devils play-by-play announcer, and current NBC Sports hockey play-by-play announcer, Michael Doc Emrick, attended a New Jersey Devils fan club meeting at the Wilshire Grand Hotel in West Orange. Doc spoke to us about his decision to go into a career in hockey play-by-play announcing, his time with the Devils, what led to the decision to go to a national sports network, and all his other major achievements through his historic career.
Well, fortunately, the Devils weren't in a one-team town, and so the treatment of the team was very much like it would be in a network broadcast with one exception. Did we care about how they did? Sure. But we realized that we're fans of other teams, and so Madison Square Garden Network always wanted us to treat things evenly and fairly. But the good thing, too, was that when you are doing a game of the same team, the fans of that team want to hear about their team and what they're doing in relationship to that game. So the difference was not necessarily in tone, but in content. We did about 70-30, 70% to 30% was largely done about the Devils, whereas in a network telecast it's 50-50. So the large difference really was the percentage of content. Well, I think part of it was that we sort of grew together. Dave Lewis, who was one of our defensemen at the time, later became the coach of the Bruins and Red Wings, said that he played on the team in '83 and said they were the best bunch of guys he ever knew that couldn't win a hockey game. They weren't a very good team then. They were the typical expansion team that was pretty well beaten up, wasn't allowed really to have very good talent at the start of their beginnings in Kansas City. And so they didn't grow very fast. But what happened later on was they evolved into something pretty good. And when I came back in '93, it was Jacques Lemaire's first year as coach and Marty Brodeur's first year as the regular goaltender. They won the first 7 games right out of the blocks, and I realized things were a lot different this time than they were before. Well, I'll tell you what it's like. Imagine going into a studio, sitting down at a desk, having a computer screen that just has a subject in front of you. You have no video, no movement of players, And you're working with really cooperative, understanding people who realize that you, in a 6-hour session, you're going to need a break or two along the way. They're really good that way. But pretend that you're asked to, without using names and without using team names, to describe a play like this. Okay, the goalie's pulled. The team that is trying to attack with 6 men can't get out of their own zone. The goalie's off and they're still pinned back there and they can't get out. Okay. And so what you do is, in your imagination, you describe the frustration of them trying to get out of their own end. And that's all. You don't carry it to center ice or anything. And then they say, that's okay, now we need 4 more. Different words so that there's a variety in what the game can trigger. And that's what it's like. And so by the end of the session, when you've done a lot of imagination and you've tried to do different wording on each one, you're tired. It's not a decision process. It's just whatever I see here goes up here and somehow or other comes out here. Years ago, before I even called my first game, I was doing games to myself in a tape recorder. Most of them in IHL cities, largely Fort Wayne. And I would talk to anybody about this that I could talk to. And the announcer in Dayton, Lyle Stieg, had been doing games for 10 years. And I said, do you have any advice? And he said, if you can come up with different ways to say the same thing, because let's say the puck dumped in from center ice, it's thrown in a number of times in an evening. If you can come up with a little different way to say it each time, I think that would be good. And so as time passed, I never wrote down a number of verbs on a card or anything like that, but I just tried to use different ways of saying the same thing. Then people like yourself started noticing it, and it wasn't anything that I really conspired to do. It was just a natural outgrowth of my own years of doing it, and doing about 3,500 games and a lot of dump-ins from center ice that kind of had different ways of being described. Yeah, it was special because I'd been around those guys for so many years, and so many of them had been there during the time that I was there and had been there for over 10 years. I mean, Marty Brodeur, the goaltender, 1993, and here it was 12. And so that's 19 years. And this guy had been a part of so many moments that any Devils fan or any Devils announcer would have in their memory bank. So was it easy? Yeah, it was, because you knew all the guys on one team that you were going to go in and talk to every day. And it wasn't that I didn't know the Kings, but there were some of them that had come up during that year or from the last time that I'd broadcast a Kings game that were new. So it was a little easier having one team that you knew pretty well and another team that you had to work harder to learn. And of course, doing it in a friendly location like Prudential Center for 3 of those games during the final made it very comfortable too. And a lot of times, as I said earlier, it's where you work. And at Prudential Center, we're in the fire lounge, and it's 20 rows up, and you can see everything, and you can identify players. And I love to be able to read numbers and identify players. Some places you can't, but at Prudential Center you can. Absolutely no aspirations to go further with this. Those were games 2 and 3 in my life. Baseball was the first thing I wanted to do, but then when hockey came along at age 14, baseball never was an element for me, other than a fan of the Pirates since 1959. But Greg Brown, who has been the broadcaster for the Pirates for 23 years, is a hockey guy. He spent some time in Buffalo doing the Bison's baseball team and spent a lot of time around the Sabres, and so we talk hockey a lot. And he said, you know, you love the team so much, why don't you come on with us? And it was an invitation extended a year ago in April, and the Penguins didn't last long enough in the playoffs for me to get there at the same time the Pirates were in town. So it wasn't an easy invitation to accept. But I wound up my wife and I go to Florida in the springtime, and when spring training is on, And it worked out this year that I could do that, and so Greg was so good to invite me on for both radio and television. So now that has been checked off, and I'm very happy with the memory of it, and that's it. Under the radar is the qualifier there, because I would not be surprised about Tampa getting a repeat trip to the final. And I think Anaheim is probably the team that has the most to prove, but they've probably got the best arsenal to prove it with. So I guess on the outside, people wouldn't be surprised if Anaheim made the final this year. But I think on the other side of it, I think I would be heartened by the fact that they did get there, because in so many cases they're not expected to be there. They've got a lot to prove because they've had some early outs, and I think the last year getting to the conference final and losing in the 7th game to Chicago will bother them a long time until they make their return. Don't quit, because there are a lot of reasons to quit. This takes a lot of resilience, and you have to deal with quite a bit of I guess rejection, because there are a lot of jobs that people like and want, but only one person gets chosen for those jobs. And so there are times when you'd like to be the guy, but you don't get chosen. For many years, I think my opinion of working at the Garden was probably dictated by where we worked. And where we worked was the worst place in the league for a long time. And they understood that. It was an afterthought, first of all, when they opened the place in 1968. Emil Francis, the general manager, was walking around with the engineer, and he asked where the press box was. And the engineer is reported to have said, quote, "I knew we forgot something." So for years, the broadcasters and the media, the writers, worked in the corner where the Zamboni comes out, in those low seats just above the glass, and they would occasionally get gonged by shots that would come over the glass because we didn't have the netting up at that time. But what happened with this new renovation at Madison Square Garden is they created the best place in the United States to work, as opposed to having one of the worst places. We are on the 10th floor. We are 20 rows back. You can see everything, including the corners. And it is now the best place to do a hockey game. It was one of the best games I've ever seen, largely because the outcome was in doubt, the goaltender was pulled, all those things that make a game exciting in the waning seconds, and then the U.S. tied it up on a goal by Zach Parise. So now it's going to overtime. Who's going to win? It was the only time that I recall in any Olympic game that my analyst, Eddie Olczyk, talked about Roberto Luongo in goal, saying, if I'm the U.S. coach, I tell him to shoot from anywhere because this guy looks uncomfortable. Yet, he only did give up the one goal and got the win. Ryan Miller was sensational, and those are all memories that I carry from a great time. I've never gotten many gifts from players. You don't expect that when you're working a game. But after that Olympics was over, I was not the only one, but Ryan Miller sent a letter and a puck for every save that he made in the Olympics. He was the MVP of the Olympics, and he sent one of those pucks and letters to me, and you don't forget that. Well, it's not an inspiration. It's just basically the people have been so nice to me, and I care about them, and they ask me to come back. And there'll come a time when, you know, years pass, and I remember there was a guy who is easily forgotten now because he wasn't the most recent host of The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson, but he talked about the lifespan of any career. The producers say, "Get me John Wayne," the longtime actor. Who is John Wayne? It begins, number one, who is John Wayne? Number two, get me John Wayne. Number three, get me a John Wayne type. Number four, who was John Wayne? So, all of life is fleeting, as George C. Scott said, playing the part of George Patton. But with all of that passing, you realize you're not around forever, and if you can make people's lives better briefly, why not? And they invite me to come, so why not?
Sean, tell me what this experience was like for you, being able to interview someone so legendary like Doc Emrick.
The experience was fantastic. I mean, I couldn't put into words the opportunity when I was asked. I mean, you know, just going back to our point before, when I was asked to do the interview, I was almost starstruck. So going to do the interview and just, you know, even just being there, like I was there, shirt and tie, jacket, and here comes Doc Emrick walking in a nice, not even a nice shirt, it was just a regular shirt, khakis, and a Pittsburgh Pirates hat. So it showed the kind of personality that Doc had. He was a very down-to-earth guy, very nice guy, and I mean, they did a Q&A at the Devils fan club. He was talking for, I don't know, maybe like a good hour, answering every question, and he's still very loyal to the Devils. That's what I definitely loved about that, is even though he did go national, it was very nice to see he was still loyal to the fans that he's been around so many years. So his loyalty, the fact that he's extremely a caring person, a nice person, the interview was fantastic, and finding that out about Doc was incredible.
What was your favorite part of the whole interview?
My favorite part of the interview was, again, just finding out what kind of a guy he was. You look at Doc Emrick and you understand that he's legendary. He's been in this business a long time. He is the most well-known voice in broadcasting, not even just in hockey, broadcasting, period. Some people are like, oh, I don't know who Doc Emrick is, and then you just show them a clip of his audio and you're like, oh, that guy. So doing that with somebody like that famous, like even just telling my family about it, they were amazed that I was going to get to do that. But then meeting him and like him coming up to me to introduce himself. So he's like, so you're going to interview me. I'm Doc Emrick. Like just that. He's down to earth. He's caring. He's loyal. He gave us an easy 25 minutes when I think we told him 15, and he didn't care. And he didn't have anybody telling him that, hey, you have to do this, or you have to do that. He gave us, 100% of his attention, 100% of his time. So just finding out the person that Doc is, that to me was my favorite part.
This had to be an incredible learning experience. So tell me, what is the best thing that you learned from Doc Emrick?
It definitely made me learn better how to prepare. That's one, because again, you're interviewing a legendary Hall of Fame broadcaster. You don't want to go in there unprepared. You don't want to go in there, not say stuttering, but not know what you're going to ask next. You don't want to go in there without a follow-up to any answer he might have. You want to do your research, and it definitely made me, sit down, put some time into it, and research exactly what I was going to ask, any follow-ups, have information, stats, anything that he's ever done in his career I knew about before going in. That's one thing. Another thing is just conducting it. It really depends on the attitude of the interviewer and the interviewee is how I would say the momentum of the interview will go. And again, you had a guy like Doc who was an incredible guy, very down to earth. So the interview was almost like a conversation. It wasn't more like a back and forth like question answer. It was a conversation. So I definitely learned the differences with that is if you can present yourself in a great way with an attitude that he's going to like and he can reflect off of, the interview is just going to be so much better. So definitely, like you said, a huge learning experience, learn how to research and definitely learn better how to, conduct myself in an interview.
Now, you yourself are the sports director here on campus of
Yes.
WMSC, our radio station. So what is your involvement with that, and what are your responsibilities?
So my responsibilities as sports director, they start off, obviously the big ones is getting approval, staffing, and broadcasting Montclair State Athletics. Our big three sports, of course, are football, basketball, men's and women's, of course, and baseball. And of course, we do soccer every now and then. We're trying to do club hockey this year. That's one of my goals. And obviously, as sports director, we have done, my goal at least was to do more road games, get all student voice play-by-play, which has all been accomplished while I've been the sports director, not even in a year. So, I don't give myself all the credit. We have a great student management team at the radio station. Our general manager, Annabella Poland, is fantastic, definitely leading the way, leading the charge. So, to me, and of course, I monitor all the recaps that are read on air. I monitor what my team does. I train my team in sports broadcasting, how to get involved, be on air, positions off air. So there's a lot that really goes into my job. So yeah.
How has this interview with Doc inspired or changed how you're going to work in radio moving forward?
It definitely it was definitely an eye-opening experience, I think. It was definitely one of those opportunities that don't come around every now and then. So when it comes to the, what do I do when I get out of here? It's almost like connections, I think. So it's like putting on a resume, I interviewed Doc Emrick. I mean, I went for interviews for internships over the summer, and that was a one constant question was, you interviewed Doc Emrick, how was that? It's like, because everybody knows who Doc Emrick is. So this definitely changed my outlook going forward, because I realized how hard it is to get into this business, and opportunities like this don't come around that often. And the school, Tom Kaminsky, put a lot of trust in me to conduct a big interview like that. It was easily the biggest interview I ever done, and for them to trust me to do it, I was 19 at the time, I'm just a student, and I'm gonna interview a Hall of Fame broadcaster. So it definitely made me realize that you have to be trusted in this business.
Now, you mentioned, what do I do when I get out of here, and internships. Tell me, you have an internship at SiriusXM Radio. How's that going? It's
going amazing. I mean, I just started. I'm working for their sports department for their morning show, and of course, I'm working for Adam Shine as well. The opportunity is fantastic. Everybody there is very welcoming. Of course, an internship, you are at the bottom level, but they don't treat you like that. Yes, you have to do some of the bottom level stuff, but they treat you with a sense of respect over at SiriusXM, and that's what I really like about it, and that's what I was told when I applied there, and I didn't really believe it until I walked through the door, how welcoming and how nice these people were, and how much they're willing to help. So, it's like from screening phone calls to editing to learning how to run the board, they would rather you ask the question over and over and over again instead of you getting it wrong multiple times. So they're very helping, they're very welcoming, and so far it's been a fantastic experience, I think.
Moving forward after that, what would be your ultimate goals and aspirations in radio and sports?
My ultimate goal is to obviously be on air. I mean, everybody that knows me knows that, but definitely to learn everything I can by the time I get out of here. So that's why I'm interning at SiriusXM. I'm learning how to do a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. That's why at the radio station, I know how to run a lot of the off-the-scenes type of things before being on air. But of course, the end goal for me is to eventually be on air. Where that is, I don't know. At first, before I got to college, it was play-by-play. But after having my own sports show and doing broadcasts, not so much play-by-play, but like studio hosting, I'm kind of liking that aspect a bit more. And with the sports show, I love having an opinion. So, I mean, I can go and be a sports anchor and do all the facts and make the best of it and have a great time doing it, but there's something about me giving an opinion. It's something about me saying or disagreeing or agreeing with something that I've truly, almost like fallen in love with sports radio. So definitely leaning more into that direction. But again, learn everything I can when I get out of here and make the best of it.
How has Montclair helped you to work towards those aspirations and goals?
They helped me tremendously. I was the shy kid when I walked in. Very shy kid. Sometimes I still am, especially when meeting new people, especially when doing new things, but definitely have been very more comfortable when I got to Montclair State. I mean, it starts with the radio station. From day one, again, at the radio station, just like Sirius, very welcoming, very understanding. They groomed me to where I am right now, how to get an interview, how to conduct yourself on air. Best way to learn is to be thrown into the fire, so do all the uncomfortable stuff right away. And over time, it really helps you grow as a person. And the Montclarian as well, I'm involved with them. So again, grabbing interviews, even like if a team loses, you still got to go get that interview. It's very uncomfortable, but you get used to it. I think Montclair really helped me groom in that aspect. It really made me, I think, a more comfortable person. And then by the time I get out of here, it's just, being comfortable when going into this field, that's goal number one. Goal number two is obviously what you want to do the rest of your life.
When did you realize that sports and radio were your passions?
Since I was 11. I mean, just a side story. I was 11 years old, and my brother was playing minor league, which was a step below Little League, and I was in Little League, so I didn't play with him that year. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go up and announce their games. And for some strange reason, I was just doing play-by-play, and they let me do it over the mic, over the field. And, some people called it distracting. Some people said he shouldn't be doing that. And then just about 98% of the rest of the people there loved it. And for some strange reason, and I owe that to a lot of people, over at our Little League fields for that. That is really where I got my start. And since then, and I mean, my high school didn't have a TV department, didn't have a radio department, but for some strange reason, that was always my career goal, and it's stuck ever since.
So tell me, who would be another icon or legend in sports that you would love to interview if the opportunity presented itself?
Well, that's a tough one. You see, I've had a lot of good interviews after Doc. I mean, I interviewed Ron Darling as well. I had a lot of good interviews with radio personnel. But if there was one, I mean, I know Joe Buck is coming to Montclair in a couple of months. That would be a great interview to do. If I were given the opportunity, I'm going to be there for a class and probably for the radio station as well. So that would be a tremendous interview to do. A dream interview, I think. I mean, Gary Cohen from SNY, the Mets play-by-play announcer. I mean, I grew up listening to him, watching him since I was about 10 when SNY came out. So, and he's been their voice ever since. So, I mean, to me, that would be a great interview to do. And then, of course, like I said, Joe Buck, if I were given the chance. But just off the top of my head, I mean, that's a tough question. But just thinking about it, Joe Buck comes to mind, Gary Cohen, guys like that.
That's incredibly exciting. Tell me about what specifically you would like to do, like with sports and radio, like ultimate goal.
Well, the ultimate goal, like I said before, is to be on air. That is the end goal.
Could you see yourself as a play-by-play announcer, something like Doc Emrick in his shoes?
I could. Again, it really comes down to what I can get when I get my foot through the door. I mean, again, like, you know, I've fallen in love with just having an opinion. So maybe play-by-play isn't the way I want to go. Maybe, you know, sports hosting on like a radio station or maybe a TV network, depending on, because, you know, some TV networks are grooming into that opinion force type aspect. So to me, you know, just doing that over the last couple of years and having my own opinion and people tell me, yeah, you know, you have a good point. You know, you made good points here. You know, we like what you're doing. Just hearing that, I mean, it really almost was a career change. You know, when I got here, it was play-by-play. Ultimate goal, no doubt, that's what I want to do. But now it's almost like, you know, I could be a studio host. I could be a radio host. I could be a TV anchor. I could be a play-by-play announcer and be happy with the rest of my life. So there's a lot of goals for me. But play-by-play obviously is the big one, but everything else will be completely fine.
Thank you so much, Sean, for joining us. We're very excited to have you here.
Thank you.
If you would like more information about this episode of Carpe Diem or any other Carpe Diem, you can write to us at the email address on your screen, carpediem@mail.montclair.edu, or call us at 973-655-5158. For Carpe Diem, I'm Patrick Clark. Thanks for watching.